Hello. Hi, Srini. Hi, Andrew. Hi, Satya.
Hello. Hi, Revati. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
Hi, Revati.
Very well, thank you.
Hi, Satya.
Hey.
Hi, Revati. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Hello, Manjula.
Very well, thank you.
Hi, Satya.
Hey.
Hi, Revati. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah, I think we can all hear, right? Yeah. Okay. Pooja, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We have just a very small presentation to set a context. Pooja will do that. And let's start off immediately. Hi, Naresh.
Hi.
Yes. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes. We have just a very small presentation to set a context. Pooja will do that. And let's start off immediately. Hi, Naresh.
Hi.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes. We have just a very small presentation to set a context. Pooja will do that. And let's start off immediately. Hi, Naresh.
Hi.
There's a lot of disturbance.
Yeah, I'm able to hear twice all the voices. 1 second.
Can I request everybody else to be on mute so that we can just quickly Pooja, can you just start off?
Yes, ma'am. Sure. 1 second. Yes. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Good evening, everyone. We are very happy to conduct this discussion on implementation of Clean Air Street, ideas and opportunities for Bengaluru. Further, I would like to invite our moderator of the day, Ms. Revati Ashok, Honorable Trustee and CEO of BPAC, Bengaluru Political Action Committee. We are very happy to conduct this discussion along with DULT, Directorate Urban Land Transport, and we thank Manjula ma'am for giving this opportunity along with us. And further, I'll just quickly run through a presentation just to set up a context for a 5 minute, just to understand on what is currently happening. So what is Clean Air Street? Clean Air Street aims to reprioritize clean mobility to demonstrate the positive impact on very focused on people and sustainability. So what are the major objectives of it? It wants to demonstrate and understand the pollution to experiment on other streets. So challenges we are looking at. From November 2020, from November 7th to February, the motorized vehicle is being closed as the entry on the Clean Air Street, that is on Church Street, only on weekdays. Church Street is the will be transformed into a demonstration for a clean air innovations. And this is a kind of an initiative which is being tried around the world as well. So some around 46 years ago, a similar kind of an initiative was tried in Colombia on Sunday and holidays. The streets used to be closed from 11 p.m. to 2 p.m. and nearly 25% of its 8 million population got a chance to participate in it, which is around 46 years back. And definitely Milan is again experimenting on pedestrianizing its streets and pedestrianizing and giving more importance to NMT. And definitely Vancouver, Canada, having 4.5 hectare of public park made only for pedestrian and cycle users. And we are car-free initiatives in Netherlands around in 19, which is started in 1965. And some of the initiatives around the world which we see is again a New York. This street example probably is a probably can set a right example for people in New York context, where to transform the streets into social public spaces and more activity driven spaces, which is much needed for Bengaluru. And not only in the world, definitely we have some precedents running in India as well. So one of it is the Cycle Day by Bengaluru, which is again under DULT. DULT is conducting last Sundays of every month to promote cycling and NMT and sustainability in the city. And Gurgaon, Haryana, has also started to close 4.5 kilometers of its streets only for NMT on every Sunday from 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. So open for recreational and community activities. And Hyderabad has also tried similar initiative and pedestrianizing its area around Charminar, and also giving more importance to sellers and restaurateurs and for other activities. And Ahmedabad has declared few of its busiest streets for as car-free streets in Ahmedabad. From 4 p.m. to 11 p.m., like restricted hours, and to get into more playground for children and sports activities. And we definitely are seeing extensive use of biking and walking during that time in the street. And one of the important example which we have all of us have seen here is in Karol Bagh, New Delhi, where again a 1.5-kilometer long stretch busy area has been pedestrianized, and to give more importance to non-motorized transport. Definitely now a similar initiative has been taking place in Church Street, which is one of the busiest street in the city, and which is known for its nightlife and live life in the city, and also which is known for its more pedestrian friendly street, the kind of footpaths and everything. So definitely Church Street is a platform to start, or a right pilot to start a clean air street. So we really thank all the people involved in making clean air street having a pilot as Church Street. Further, I would request moderator Revati Ashok to carry on the discussion, and let's see how far we can take Church Street, Clean Air Street in extending it into more number of days in the week, or expanding it to other streets in the city as well. So for yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you, Pooja, for that. It's matter of really great pleasure for me to have all our panelists in panel 1 and panel 2. This has been our dream for several years now, and BPAC has been fighting for this for the last 6 years. And it is really the government then came up with the pedestrianization of, we demanded it and several others demanded, we came up with this pedestrianization. The design was done by Naresh Narasimhan. We are privileged to have him there. We have, later we will have Kiran Mazumdar, R.K. Mishra, all of them fought very hard for this. And for once, and thank you DULT and Manjula for having made this a reality today, because finally it was not government the problem, because the design was ready, the street was ready, but the cars would not move out of the street. And we kept asking for this. And for once, it was not the government, it was the people who stalled it. So I think, again, it's a lesson. How do we carry all cohorts of people along with us in our decisions? There was divided view amongst people whether we should have, whether it should be pedestrianized or not. But I'm very glad that Madam Manjula has taken this bold decision to pedestrianize this at least for 2 days a week. Hopefully this can be extended to other days. And as Pooja said, it can be extended to other parts of the city. Maybe we can see Food Street becoming completely pedestrianized. We can see Malleshwaram becoming pedestrianized. Maybe certain parts of City Market, larger parts of MG Road and various other places getting pedestrianized. So we are really looking forward to this. And with this, let me start off on the first panel. I would like to invite Professor Ashish Verma from IASC, who has done tremendous amount of work in the area of transportation and sustainable transportation. Andrew Stokes from Catapult, who has really piloted this initiative today, and we are very proud to be associated with them. Srinivas Alavali, from Janagraha. He has been more well known as a city activist pushing for sustainable initiatives, and we are very glad to have Srinivas here with us. Satya Shankaran, of course, he is the bicycle mayor. He has been pushing for cycling a lot across the city. So we are very happy to have our first panel for this discussion. So do we have everybody here? Yeah, I think so. So if you all can, if the panelists can please unmute themselves, that would be great. And let me start off with my first question to Professor Ashish Verma. Are you there?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm there. Thanks, Revati.
Yes. Okay. So I thought let me start off with the first question. I think you have done so much work in the city, looking at sustainability, looking at air quality, looking at how we should do things. What do you feel about today and what is going on? And how do you think we will be able to use this pilot? It is still a pilot. It is not a reality. We hope this will become totally a reality and not remain a pilot. How do you think we can use technology to measure air quality?
Thanks, Revati, and for getting this whole panel being organized and having so many illuminaries, joining today to share their thoughts and ideas on this. So far, on various platforms at various times, also, in BPAC forums, we have discussed a lot about what all constitutes this whole notion of sustainability and sustainable mobility. In some cases, we have also talked about what we should not do in the city and so on. What we were really lacking was a real test bed, a real implementation where people can feel, what we are talking about. And so that way, not just implementing a street to be pedestrianized, but also treating it as a test bed and trying to demonstrate a lot of solutions. For example, electric micro mobility options, or understanding how the tangible impacts are felt, both in terms of, for example, air quality. If vehicles are off the road, how does it impact the air quality? And not just that, when there are businesses on such streets, obvious question would always be how they are impacted, how their businesses are impacted, whether they gain or lose, what is their perception, so on. So this is really a wonderful opportunity. First time we came, and in fact, in 10 years of my, being more than 10 years of my being here in ISC and in Bangalore, this first time we have got an opportunity to try a actual implementation as a test bed, not just a simulation, that we can do and run in a computer model and, derive some analysis and results. Here we are doing actual test bed and not just doing impact analysis, but also making people understand and have a tangible understanding. So our methodology not just revolves around these specific parameters of how traffic is reduced or how these things are impacted. We are measuring in terms of quality of life, because at the end of the day, the whole idea is how do we make the living standard and people's quality of life better in the city. So that way, I really feel very excited about this whole test bed that is being done presently. And with the impact assessment that we are doing, hopefully at the end, we'll really give a very comprehensive set of analysis as to in what all ways this whole pilot has turned out, how it has impacted and helped people, city at large. And hopefully this will provide a good decision support to officers like Madam Manjula, the whole bureaucracy, our elected representatives, to then take this initiative forward and implement it on a more permanent basis and also in different other parts of the city. So I think that's what I really feel excited about.
Thank you, Professor Ashish. I will come back to you later to understand a little bit more about how you plan to analyze the data and what are your plans.
Sure.
And I will come back to that. But now let me move on to Andrew. Andrew, can you, for the benefit of all the participants here, explain the Clean Air Street initiative and the pilot and what all you're planning around it, and how can we have more life in the, one of the concerns always is, will there be lower footfall because people are not willing to walk that extra mile, and therefore the footfalls will stop on Church Street, which has got a lot of shops and restaurants all over. Now, how can we create sustainable bazaars, and what can we do to ensure that the economic activity does not fall at the same time?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the opportunity to join you today, and with such an esteemed panel. It's a very great honour, so thank you. Yes, we are very proud and pleased to be involved in this project with our partners in Bangalore. Just to give the wider context of how this came about, we are working on a project at the moment called the Innovating for Clean Air project, which is looking at some of the air quality issues and some of the challenges around electric vehicles in the city of Bengaluruu. And it's sharing knowledge between the UK and India, because we also have problems around air quality and electric vehicles in many UK cities. And it's also trying to use the power of innovation and the really vibrant innovator community in Bangalore and their counterparts in the UK to do things together, to showcase what they can do, to test what they can do, to do some pilots and really build that ecosystem, but also show the benefits of innovation and collaboration in this space. So it's a really collaborative program. We've been working with Professor Verma and ISC for a long time, obviously with Dalt as well, and many other colleagues in Bengaluru who've been invaluable for us. So yes, the Clean Air Street is just one part of this initiative, but we thought this was a great idea to really support some of the goals of our program of showing what innovation can do, and widening citizen awareness and starting debates about the clean air transition and electric vehicles and so on, but also at the same time aligning with some of the kind of goals and things that Dalt has wanted to do, and Professor Verma has mentioned that we've been hoping to pilot for some time. So it's a really good opportunity. I think we've obviously, as you know, the street will be closed to I describe it as a zero emissions vehicle zone. So it will be closed to non-motor traffic from the 7th of November for a number of months at the weekends. But what we are allowing is e-mobility, sustainable mobility solutions to be deployed, and some air quality innovations to be deployed as well. And this is a really good opportunity, as Professor Verma says, to test them in a real world context, as well as testing the wider impacts of the pedestrianisation and the clean air street itself. So we kind of, it's brilliant for us because it's allowing both of those, testing the viability of this pedestrianisation approach, and at the same time allowing us to showcase and test and I guess socialise and make people aware of the different innovations out there in the e-mobility and air quality space. So we've got both UK and Indian firms deploying things. We've got a number of firms with e-mobility solutions, a number with air quality solutions as well. And it's an opportunity for them to show what they could do, find out about the market, test things in a real world context, and socialise what they're doing as well. So the general context is absolutely fabulous. We're really, really excited about it. In terms of how we can keep it sustainable, So this is obviously a tricky question, but I think it's kind of panels like this and other events that we can keep a focus on Church Street and what's going on. We've been working quite a lot with Satya and Dalt as well to identify other organizations who might want to showcase some of the work they're doing around street design, or showcase some other work they're doing around electric mobility and things like this. And we've got a number of ideas going on. We're engaging with a number of organizations at the moment, the likes of, for example, WRI, we're in conversations with to see if they can incorporate some of their work into the street. So we've got a steady kind of drumbeat of interesting activities to keep the interest up. Of course, we're open for many more suggestions in that area. And it's important that because, you guys are obviously far more familiar with the local context, so we're really open to local ideas of how we can keep this up. But we've got our eyes open, we've got a number of ideas of things we can do to keep this going, which is obviously important to keep the interest and keep citizen awareness and eyes on the project.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. And, we feel so excited. As I mentioned, we've been pushing this for over 5 to 6 years, and it's been a long, long while. And it's really, it was saddening to see that the entire newly designed street, which was meant for pedestrians, was there, but it was taking on heavy traffic, but it was built for pedestrians and non-motorized traffic. So it's really gladdening to see that finally, whatever we wanted to do and the redesign of the city, of the street, is really coming to use. Let me now turn to Satya, who is the bicycle mayor, and he has been evangelizing cycling for a long time relentlessly. How do you feel, Satya, about this whole activity, and how do you think what else can we do? Because this time it was not the government which prevented this. It was the citizens who prevented this street from becoming pedestrianized. So government was all ready several months ago, and that's why they allowed this road to be redesigned.
So I guess you need to give credit to DOLT for pushing this, because that there are a lot of behavioral aspects to this that comes in, our biases, our thinking of status quo, and how difficult it is to change our habits and things like that. So all credit. So there was a good amount of work done on the infrastructure side by BBMP and with the help of Naresh and others. That was a necessary condition, but not sufficient. So the next step, the hard part, was engaging with people and trying to make this happen. You talked about Cyclovia, cycle days and all that. It engages people, it engages their minds, it engages them in activities, and it's a lot of hard work to bring people together and do all of these things. What it comes down to ultimately, Revati, is Church Street has a metro station right on the street, right? It comes down to transit-oriented development that we are talking about for quite a while now. We need to move more and more streets around stations like this. Like we have 40 metro stations, 10 TTMCs, 50 suburban rail stations. Even if you do 1 kilometer around these stations in an, let's say, NMT and micromobility only, electric, safe, clean micromobility, let's call it that. If you move that 1 kilometer around each, you're talking about 100 kilometers of extremely beautiful pedestrian NMT micromobility friendly streets that can catalyze development at a totally different level, right? So you need to nudge people. The existing development there, transit oriented development already has it. Professor Verma can talk more about it. Transit needs to nudge the way development happens around these stations, right? We need to provide the relevant nudges. The FSI and the FAR gives you the first step of nudge, which is density. But then people occupy those spaces and move to those spaces using transit and transport, right? You need to nudge them using the right kind of incentives. So around transit stations, there has to be incentive for NMT and micromobility that can then transform into how people live, what kind of businesses come there, what kind of residences come there. It can't be bungalows coming there and sitting around. It'll change the way development happens in those places. So it has been a lot of hard work put in by DULT and a lot of volunteers like myself who have helped in trying to do certain things there. And like you all expressed already, it's something that has come as a pilot. And I think it is possible with certain amount of policy nudges, which incentivize micromobility and adoption of public transit. And over the long term, it's the TOD draft TOD policy is already out. Maybe you all should take a look and come back and say, how do we use transit and the right modes to nudge people's behavior and nudge the way development happens in that? It will happen over time. The first step was putting good infrastructure, which was done very nicely by everybody here. But the next step was the hard work of getting people to buy into these things, and over time build this. How do we shift these things over time? So I am very excited that we did this, and it is also important to scale this sustainably over time to many more areas, and I see only positive developments coming out of this.
Thank you, Satya. Let's move on to Srinivas. Srini, pleasure to have you here in your new avatar. And you have always been vocal about sustainable mobility and all things good. How do you feel about today? I know it's a baby step. We need to take huge steps, but how do you feel about it today? And how can we ensure that now that we have spent so much time trying to get off the ground, now that it is off the ground finally, how do we accelerate this flying takeoff and ensure that we don't land on the ground? We keep soaring higher and higher. And what are the things we can do with by engaging different kinds of citizens who are for it, citizens who are against it, and find a via media and a middle ground? And what was lacking? Can you just talk about this a little bit?
Sure. Thanks, Revati, and Deepak for having this conversation and inviting me to be part of it. It's wonderful to see Satya, Andrew. Hello, Andrew, and Professor Burma. Always a pleasure to meet. I'm joining you all from the historic city of Konark in Odisha, where my work is as of today. But it's wonderful to connect with Bengaluruu in the evening. I think there's something that you said that struck a chord with me, Revati, just now. You said something about, sometimes things, if I think back 3 years, 4 years ago, Satya, myself, and many others in the city were looking at where we are headed, right? We were demanding a suburban train. We were looking for more buses. We were trying to figure out whether to do a BRTS, bus lane and outer ring. So many different things were going on. 55 flyovers were built, and so many roads were widened, and one-ways were being made and widened and so on and so forth. This was the situation a few years ago. Now come to 2020, as of today, look at where we stand. We no longer talk about the flyovers, thank God. And then we now have the suburban train project moving forward, hopefully at a rapid pace now. Now, a lot of good things have happened recently, both from the state and the central government point of view. We have more buses actually already ordered, except that they haven't come in due to COVID and things like that. We have the bus lane, which is on Outer Ring Road, which is just amazing, the kind of speed in which it happened. And again, the coordination between DULT, Bangalore Police, and BBMP and BMTC, fantastic, something that we've never seen before as materialized with the bus lane. And then we have cycle racks on buses. Somebody in Delhi still needs to approve here. I don't know why that is, but yet there are some buses with cycle racks today in Bengaluru. That's a fantastic new thing that I've seen. And all this stuff that's going on. Oh, I heard just caught on news that we are now going to get the common mobility card between metro and the bus pretty soon, right? So, and then Church Street, right? 2 days, weekends of car-free Church Street. So what I'm saying is that in just a matter of few years, so many years of going in the wrong direction has been reversed, and Bengaluru is now charting a new course towards a new way of living, a new way of urbanized, city, sustainable city, which is centered around public transport or transit, as you want to call it, metro is, coming up pretty rapidly. A lot of things are coming together for Bengaluru. I think we all should take a moment to acknowledge the efforts involved, made by so many different people, government, all parties, all the people that are part of the government across in the last few to 3 years that have made many good decisions, and the drive they are showing to get rid of this tag that we had as the worst traffic day. Bengaluru is getting very infamous for our traffic and pollution, and I think it is safe to say that we are determined to come out of that, and these are all early signs of that there's a clean air street speaks volumes, even though it's just one street and it's Church Street and not many other streets. But still, I would say that let the impossible best not be the enemy of the possible good. If I take that principle to heart, I think what's happening in Church Street is commendable, and I wish to congratulate everyone that has played a role in it to come this far. You said something very interesting, Revati, where citizens have opposed it. Some citizens have, put brakes on it and things like that. In my experience working with communities in Bengaluru and for various campaigns around sustainability and other aspects, I think that happens because of a lack of trust between the decision makers and the citizens, especially people that that live in a particular area feel like the decisions are made by somebody who doesn't live there, doesn't feel their pain, doesn't feel their understand their plight, but they have some romantic notions about certain things, and therefore they are visualizing their dreams at our expense. This is the feeling that people have in various communities, and when decisions like this are made. I think that's a fair enough argument to make, because everybody has a right, equal right. There's nothing that's unique about any of us on this panel that is different from a resident on a Church Street or somebody else in some other street that may have a different opinion. So how do you resolve these things? I think we need to find available options, avenues to sit together and work out our differences and make people realize what is at stake, what is the long-term benefit of pedestrianization. And if you are a business owner in Church Street or a resident in Church Street, now how does this affect you, and what can we do to mitigate those pains? And the ward committees, in my opinion, are the right forums for that. Ward committees are democratic, inclusive, and they are very much local. Now, if these kind of discussions and decisions were made from the grassroots at the ward committees, then they will have a lot more legitimacy, and communities everywhere. My dream is that after seeing the success of Church Street, what we are talking about today, in the next month, so many ward committees in Malleshwaram and Jayanagar and Indiranagar, they all come together and say that why can't we have 5 Church Streets in our area, our locality? When can we start that process? Can we do evenings? Can we do Sundays only? Let them decide what is something that they can live with. And I think with the BBMP Council term ending, the BBMP commissioner has started the nodal officers and the ward committees continue. So my request, and I've already discussed with DULT a few months ago, that we should start having these conversations inside these ward committees. I think that's what makes it city-centric and get everybody have a word in it. And the decisions that are made will have far greater legitimacy and acceptance from all sections of society. I think it's our responsibility to make sure that things that are of such magnitude, this is a historic, beautiful thing that happened, but it also need to happen in a way that people truly understand the benefits of it and want to experience it themselves and feel part of owning that solution. I think for many years we went in the wrong direction, giving too much importance to vehicles and especially cars and all that. And now we are trying to reverse that. So it's going to take some time for people to come back on it. In the 80s and all that, people were very comfortable with people smoking, sitting across them on the table, secondhand smoking. Today, nobody does that because now everybody got it to their head that secondhand smoking is dangerous. So nobody does that anymore. I think the vehicles and pollution coming out of that is also will go through a similar kind of a phase where we'll all understand the benefits of public transport and pedestrianization, and that day is not very far for Bengaluru.
Yeah. So thanks, Srini. That was nice. And really, the point that you raised about having trust, different groups of people not trusting each other and not trusting the government. And these are the kinds of things that we really need to work on. And Church Street is a perfect example where crores was spent on having a beautifully designed street meant for pedestrians but used by cars. And hopefully, this mistrust, what we have learned out of this, will change what we need to do in other. The first step is always most difficult. Hopefully, the following steps in the coming months and coming years will be easier. A word of caution though, lots of new programs have been approved in the right direction, but each one of these is going to take at least 5 to 10 years to implement. And between now and then, what is that micro mobility and mobility plan that we have for the city is also equally important. And I think now that the big projects are all getting underway, we have to spend some time on how do we ease things for citizens. And let me move on back to Professor Ashish Verma now. Professor Verma, can you tell us exactly what kinds of things that you are planning to do for looking at the air pollution? How have you planned and designed various experiments in this area?
Thanks, Repti, and it was wonderful speaking to all my co-panelists and their thoughts about this whole uh, pilot that is going on. In terms of impact assessment and the overall assessment that we are doing as a research partner in this whole effort, main aim is to evaluate both quantitatively as well as qualitatively what benefits can accrue from pedestrianization of a street in a busy area in a CBD. What we are doing on Church Street. More specifically, we are trying to understand various factors that influence individuals' perception and attitude towards a mode called walking, as we say, and by having streets meant for pedestrians. Also examining both qualitatively and quantitatively how the level of service factors for pedestrians improve when you do pedestrianization of streets and how people feel about it. And in a more broader and comprehensive sense, assess the benefits of doing such pedestrian only street by comparing the results in a before and after scenario. So our whole idea is with pedestrianization and without pedestrianization, how the results are compared. And if I go to specific indicators or metrics based on which we are trying to evaluate it, it encompasses both the environmental factors, whether it is air quality. When we say air quality, we have deployed sensors, stationary sensors that are capturing the ambient levels of the main pollutants, as well as we'll also be experimenting with wearable sensors, which would be worn by some volunteers to understand how the exposure level of pollutants is also changing when you have street being free from vehicles. So that's one set of things. At the same time, qualitatively also we'll try to understand the perception of the visitors as well as shopkeepers, how they perceive the improvement in air quality, while we measure also quantitatively. Likewise, on various other factors like health impact. Okay, both a perception about whether people feel good in terms of health and well-being, um, assessing the level of service, the comfort level that people enjoy if they have much better space for walking, uh, um, the change in footfall. We want to measure and understand that also, how footfalls are changing when you have pedestrianization, not just overall on the street, but also in key establishments. At the same time, also the business, how the establishments, that are there on the street, how it is impacting their business, because that's always the main concern that people have. And so on all these aspects, we are not just capturing the quantitative data, but also the qualitative data. In fact, a very good thing we are doing as part of this pilot is also, offering a joint internship for 8 students from different engineering colleges that we have recruited. It's a joint internship between DULT and ISC, and we are giving opportunity to young students also to develop this different thinking of transportation engineering, moving away from road widening and those kind of things. So these interns are actually going and collecting a lot of these data. Other aspect that we are focusing on is if there is a change in the mode choice of people visiting Church Street. Earlier, how they used to visit Church Street, now how they're visiting Church Street. We are also checking the boarding alighting at metro station, the MG Road metro station, as well as the bus stops which are nearby the Church Street, whether the boarding alighting are changing or improving when these pedestrianizations are happening. So it's a basket of very comprehensive set of indicators that we are focusing on, both qualitatively and quantitatively. And I will just take one more minute to share some of the initial results. In fact, while this data collection will go on, and there's a lot of detailed questionnaire, survey also that we are doing throughout this 5 month of Church Street pilot. But we did some initial data collection with 54, establishments that are there on the Church Street to understand some of the factors. And one thing that came out very, nice and interesting after the first 2 weekends that this was implemented is that 75% of the shopkeepers out of this 54 have a positive perception about this whole Church Street initiative. So while they have difficulties with some parking and other issues, but overall, in terms of their perception rating that we've asked them, 75% are giving a positive, thumbs up to this whole initiative, including, excellent, very good, and good, that kind of rating. Also, in terms of difficulties that they have to access, we could see, in the mode share that the shopkeepers who come to the Church Street, 46% actually use public transport and walking and cycling. So they are largely not affected because of this. There is about 7% who use personal cars, who are, of course, facing difficulty. But DULT has engaged extensively in the initial days to see how their alternative arrangements can be done. But at the end, the whole idea is, can we nudge and shift people's behavior and choice towards using public transport, walking, cycling, and see where are the service gaps in the sustainable modes that we can improve, so that it becomes easier for them to commute using these modes. These are some initial results also that we have, which I thought is good to share today.
Yeah, I think this is terrific information, Professor Verma, and we could go on talking a lot. I know the next set of panelists are already there, and we don't want to hold them up. But one last point with Andrew. Andrew, you have been at the forefront of putting this all together. We really need to thank you for this. And what kind of startups are you involving to ensure that sustainable mobility gets a fillip? So are you in conversation? So it'll be nice for the audience to know how are we, it's nice to take sustainable transport, but then that mode of transport must be available. So availability is a big factor in changing behavior. The moment availability is there and accessibility is there, people will start using it better.
Yes, thank you very much. So currently we have, I believe it's 6 firms in the e-mobility space who are currently deploying at the moment, or are committed to deploy at some weekend along the Clean Air Street period. And yes, many of these they're at kind of different stages of development, but they do have already kind of developed technologies that are already available to buy, that are on the market. So, for example, one of the firms that is deploying is one called Buy My EV, and they have e-scooters that are available and can be can be used for kind of test drives, and we are monitoring the impacts of that and customer satisfaction with it and that kind of thing as well. We also have an electric auto rickshaw produced by a firm called Ultigreen. Then there's Transvahan, another one that also have previously worked with the Indian Institute of Science. They have an e-rickshaw and an e-cart. And finally, there's one called GreenZine as well, that are also deploying some technologies that are also already kind of either available or very close to being available as well. There are a couple of others as well. I won't take time and name them all, but yeah, many of these solutions are already available or are being tested, or they're the next models that are being tested and this kind of thing. So hopefully an initiative like this raises awareness about that, makes people think about sustainable mobility, learn about it, and we can help to stimulate this whole ecosystem, as well as finding valuable feedback about how it impacts and what people think of it.
Right. Thank you, Andrew. And any last one-word comment from you, Satya and Srini, before I close the session? I know we could have spoken some more, but I really want to be mindful of my next set of panelists who are already here and waiting. Satya?
No, I guess this was a useful experiment like you've already heard, and I think we should come together and see how we can replicate and scale this and provide the right set of nudges. There's a lot of hard work that has gone in from the team, DULT, and everybody else. And we need to figure out how we can support and scale this whole thing. It can only be good. Nothing bad can come out of this.
Right. Thanks, Satya. And Srini, any last comments, quick comments?
Yeah, so yeah, that's I think we have to be cautious about anything that's called a pilot. There are too many pilots in this world, all over the place. So when we do these pilots, the world is full of pilots all over, government projects, non-government projects, and all of that. So I think we should move very quickly. In fact, there are so many streets in Bengaluru, and I really love it that we are using the word streets more than roads, because they are really streets and not roads. And we need more and more such streets to convert into that. And this work should commence immediately. I don't think we have the luxury of waiting for several months and checking out all these results and all of that. And it's, for me personally speaking, it doesn't sound logical to me that one street can have a clean air. We exist in a large city of 700 square kilometers. So it's kind of hard sell to say this street is clean air. That's just not going to work. So we need to make it larger areas and many clean streets, and together that will work together. I think there are so many streets in Bengaluru where there is so much of pedestrianization, bicycles already. You mentioned each street, Revati. I can mention Jayanagar 4th block, Malleshwaram 8th cross. There's so many examples. I can give Vijayanagar, many places. HSR layout near the BDA complex. There's so many places where you see people moving around, and those are the places wherever you found success in the cycle days. I've been to maybe 10, 15, 20 cycle days in the last few years. Wherever you see citizen enthusiasm and excitement about cycle days, those are your places. Just go for it and make this pilot expand and stop using the word pilot and make it part of our DNA. And let people come back. And I know DULT is already running some challenges where communities can come forward and participate in it. I hope that that message gets a lot of publicity. Good ideas like this, a lot of good press, a lot of debate and discussion in the media and in the social media. I hope that happens through events like this and others. When that happens, we no longer stick with pilots, but we go full jet speed and convert Bengaluru into a heaven for pedestrians and cyclists. And that day is not very far. Thank you.
Thank you, Srini. I think that brings us to the end of this panel, unless anybody else has any comments, closing comments that they thought they should make and they didn't make. But I'm truly excited. We've all worked very hard in different ways, and we've been able to finally pull this together. We just hope, the pilot has to be translated into a permanent situation, and that's what we want to do. But it has taken many cycle days for this concept to really sink in. And I think this is the first time when commercial establishments have agreed to do something like this. And those cycle days were all done largely in residential areas. And so that was a little bit different. I think this is a little bit different. And therefore, if we can take some huge learnings out of this, I think that would be the biggest learnings. How do we marry the commerce and the sustainability and government initiatives, citizen initiatives all together? Because one cannot remain diverse from another. And I think that's really the big learning. And with that, I would really, any closing comments from anybody?
Can I just...
Sure.
Yeah. So I fully agree with what Shini said. It cannot just remain pilot. It should really quickly expand. And, DLT is already engaging on some of the programs like SUMA. I'm sure Ms. Manjula will talk more about it, where they want to engage communities and scale this up very quickly in other neighborhoods and so on. So hopefully that will start quite soon, and before this Church Street pilot period ends. So I would really love to see many more streets, candidate streets in the city becoming pedestrian only streets, at least to start with on few days of the week. Thank you.
Right. Okay, with that, we bring this discussion to a close and we move on to our next set of panelists. Kiran Majumdar-Shaw, who needs no introduction for the city. We are so pleased to have you here. I can see Naresh Narasimhan, who has been the architect, who has made Church Street what it is today. We have Madam Manjula, Commissioner of DALT. Thank you for your initiative and making this last bit, the last mile stretch, which was not happening, for making it happen. And R.K. Mishra, who has always been pushing between citizen and government, making the BBMP work and coordinating so many different things, is a terrific panel. And may I start with Kiran, who has to leave. Kiran, can you talk about, this has been a long journey for us. Can you talk about the early days in which we conceptualized something like this must happen on Church Street?
Yes, so let me start by saying that this whole concept of having well-designed roads and pedestrian streets began over a decade ago. Okay, in fact, it started with the Tender Shore roads, which all of us were involved with. And then I remember Naresh, of course, is right here, and he was very, very involved in designing the Church Street. And even before we started designing Church Street, I don't know whether Naresh remembers, but we also had come out with a complete concept of a walking zone, and it included Commercial Street. It actually also included Brigade Road and Church Street. In fact, we wanted to make that whole area a walking zone. And of course, we had a huge resistance to that because they said, no, how will cars go and how will we drive? So finally, we then, with great reluctance, narrowed it down to Church Street. And in fact, we still wanted Commercial Street to be a pedestrian street, a walking street, because we said, it's a shopping street. It's a wonderful street to make it as a pedestrian street. And we, in fact, even had a concept of having buggies, taking people, at regular intervals, it would circle and you could actually go to, various parts of the Commercial Street. But unfortunately, I think there was a lot of, a backlash from the shop owners who said, no, this is not feasible, this is not practical. And they started really lobbying with BBMP not to make it happen. So anyway, to cut the long story short, we finally went through with designing Church Street, and I must give full marks to Naresh for really, staying with this concept and finally getting it done. But as you know, when it was finally done, it wasn't a pedestrian street, and we were all very annoyed, and we kept asking Mr. Manjunath, why are you not allowing this to be a pedestrian street? It was designed as a pedestrian street. Traffic has no business to be on the road. You can give them certain timings for delivering or supplies or whatever it is, but the rest of the time you should not allow traffic. Now I must congratulate, Madam Manjula, because after all these years and efforts of trying to bring in this concept of a pedestrian street in Church Street, it has finally happened. Although it's not every day, I know they've started it on a kind of an experimental basis, but I'm very happy to hear that 75% of the shopkeepers are actually happy with a pedestrian street. And I think it's really about building consensus and getting out of this mindset problem, which is inflexible. So I think as people understand what a pedestrian street brings to their business, brings to society, and brings to the city, I think you will get a more favorable support for such streets. And as someone said, this should be about mapping the whole city and seeing which are the streets that ought to be pedestrian streets. I think that's something which we ought to do. Which are the streets that can actually be made into pedestrian streets, which people will enjoy? So any place which has a social hub of eateries, of shops, where people would love to mill around, that's what makes a city vibrant. I mean, all of us know that when we travel abroad, many cities end up being walking streets. In fact, what is even more interesting is that even in cities where the roads are still there, the pavements are much broader than the roads themselves. And I still look at New York is a good example, where when you walk a lot in New York because the pavements are very wide. And Barcelona is another such city, and you have London, which is another such city where people walk. The roads are there for the traffic, but most people prefer to walk. And I think it was very amusing for us. If you remember, when we made the Tender Shore roads, and when it was inaugurated, we got we got bashed by the citizens saying, how stupid is this? How can you make the pavements on that St. Mark's Road so wide? We need broader roads for traffic. And today you can see, many years later, it works perfectly fine. You don't actually have traffic jams on St. Mark's Road or any of the Tender Shore roads, but you have a lot of traffic jams on many other roads. And people walk quite freely on these pavements. So I really believe that when you look at a city like Bangalore, and since Manjula Madam is here, I do want to say that it is extremely important for us to beautify the city for pedestrians first. We must beautify the city in such a way that traffic flows easily, but people are now using public transport and walking to enjoy the city better. And I think that's the way it ought to be designed. Another request is that when you talk about clean streets and clean roads, I think we must also focus on keeping them clean. So I think, using these mechanical cleaners, making sure that our pavements are not littered, making sure that we really keep our city clean is going to be another very, very important part of this whole project of doing that. And one of the things I would like to suggest, Revati, you might want to look at this, is why don't we do an audit of the roads and streets and get the same kind of feedback that you just heard from one of the previous panelists, in terms of how people feel about certain streets, how people feel about certain experiences of walking on the streets. Now, I know that, I travel on Hosur Road every day. They've spent huge amounts of money making these horrible pavements, these badly laid pavements. trying to make them walking streets. They all think just by putting those bollards, it's a tender shore road, but it's not. And even the roads are so badly designed, they're all crooked, they're not straight. The whole concept of the tender shore road was that traffic will move smoothly if you have very uniform roads with proper cutouts for bus stops and things. But here you have all these wavy roads. Some parts of the road are broad, some parts are narrow. I think people should understand the concept of design. And I think, Madam, Manjula, Madam, if you could actually, get BBMP and the engineers to sit with people like Naresh and Swati and others to understand what is this concept of road design? How does it work? What should we be looking at? What is the emphasis we should lay? So I just think that this is the kind of auditing we need to do on every road in Bangalore to see how we can improve them. Most of them may not always require re-tarring, but I think just redesigning those roads can help a lot. R.K. Mishra is here, and we have often talked till we are now fed up of talking about it. We've talked about these high density corridors and how to design them, but I don't think anything has come of it. And I know I am frustrated, but I think the most frustrated person here must be RK. So I will just end my comments there by saying it's wonderful to see at long last that Church Street has been at least made into a partial pedestrian street. As someone said, we don't want these pilots. We want them to be permanent pedestrian streets, and they should understand the importance of having pedestrian walkways all around the city. And I think now that we have more and more public transport and the metro system coming into visibility and coming into that fruition, I think we should encourage people to walk.
Thank you, Kiran. I hope you'll be able to stay for some more time.
I will stay for a little more time.
Yeah, thank you. Madam Manjula, you have really piloted this whole thing. You have made literally the impossible happen. Can you tell us, a little bit about this journey? Because we got this far and it was stuck for several years, not being able to get even to this pilot. So it must not have been easy. Do tell us your journey in making this happen.
Thank you, Revati. This is, as you know, it's a joint initiative of Catapult, DALT, and IISc. See, when we moved ahead with this concept of pedestrianizing Church Street and using it as a test bed for innovations focusing on electrical energy and also air quality, we had something to fall back upon, our experience of doing Cycle Day. So in 2013, when we started Cycle Day, it was not very easy. Like, we moved Cycle Day from one community, one neighborhood to another. There also, roads were blocked, not such big streets, but, partially some small streets were blocked for people to either cycle or, have various activities on the streets. Initially, it was difficult because we always had, some residents were happy about it. Some were not happy. They would complain about noise, etc. Even getting this idea understood by our own government machinery took time. So, but once we did it, we found, communities were approaching us and they were actually taking this, taking this idea forward. You won't remember, you won't believe initially in the initial Cycle Days, we were actually literally even collecting all the trash, etc., from the road after the Cycle Day. We were setting up the stage, we were doing everything. After 1 year, we were nowhere into picture. We were just there facilitating police permissions, etc. And from literally doing that, Cycle Day, we became somebody who is only facilitating it because communities simply took this idea. So what is important is to do something and maybe kind of ignite the imagination of people around that idea. And people would, if they like it, then naturally they own it and they would try to experiment with that. So I think even with this Church Street, I feel that probably once people see a market street, a shopping street being pedestrianized, and everybody is enjoying it. Though I wouldn't say everybody, because there are some people still complaining about it and cribbing. Most people are enjoying it.
The 25%.
Yeah, most people are enjoying. I think there will be more. You wouldn't believe that we recently, just a couple of days back, got an email from HSR layout from one gentleman saying, why don't you pedestrianize a street in HSR and I will work with you. I will organize and mobilize volunteers and I will work with you. So this is something quite nice, and I'm quite sure such, doing such initiatives would have their, trigger their own momentum in the city. Considering, you asked our experience on doing this, I think one thing was we were a bit lucky also, I should say. In a way, because of this unfortunate situation, of COVID-19 situation, etc., businesses were not doing well. In fact, when the first time we went to Church Street, it was like empty almost. So people were also in that frame of mind, I think, to see okay, let us see what can happen. Maybe, something can be better, not worse than whatever is the situation. I think that was the moment, you should also credit the time in which we have taken this forward. So it was kind of, businesses were okay with it. We had a tough time convincing residents, and our staff had to go literally to their houses and have meetings with them. And still some people are not convinced. Still we have every week is, and I hope it is not so, but every weekend is negotiating with somebody wanting some parking or wanting some permit, wanting some things. I hope it is not so, but it is like that. But I'm okay with it, because these are the initial issues with any initiative that you take, forward. And these issues kind of, you have to deal with them, because 100% people will not be happy with anything. So we need to deal with them. So even today we get some stinkers from somebody writing to us saying, you've not done this, you've not done that, you've gone ahead and pedestrianized the Church Street and inconvenienced us, but we take it in our stride. So having done this, and then, we got a lot of support from BBMP. I must acknowledge, without BBMP's support, this would not have been possible. Their marshals are there at our disposal. Their Paura Karmikas are there keeping the street clean. And activities, one thing I always thought, even when doing Cycle Day, is people should know what to do with a blocked stretch, with a pedestrianized street. Now, you can't make it into some kind of an event or a jamboree, having a lot of people dancing, singing, blah, blah, blah. Everybody will enjoy it. But what would they do? Suppose these events are not there. So people should know what to do with it. So here in the Church Street, we kind of gave this opportunity. BBMP was nice enough to permit restaurants to put their seating outside onto the pavement. And that itself caught the imagination of people. And some, a lot of people, buskers and a lot of cultural, artists, etc., are interested. They're coming, and there are various activities going on. Generally, people are coming to just walk along and have a good time. But I will be happy only when all who are coming to Church Street come by metro or by bus. I think we still have some, distance to travel. So people are coming there, but they're just wanting to come to enjoy the pedestrianized street. But if they're coming by their own cars and there is a parking problem in the neighborhood, I don't think we have succeeded to that extent. So in the initial, the next few months, our focus will also be to ensure somehow incentivize in some way or other, and try to encourage people to come by metro, by having some, we have kind of engaged with Science Gallery to do some fun event. And so with other activities like, giving some lottery prizes, or I don't know, we're thinking about it to just get more people coming by public transport. And then we can say we have pedestrianized the street, and people are also coming there by walk, by cycle, by public transport. And then we can say, okay, we have achieved really, something. So that's possibly is the goal objective that we have in mind.
Maybe providing non-motorized transport as first and last mile connectivity to that area may encourage. Of course, people should be walking, but even till such time people get used to walking, that may be one step forward.
No, it is good. I see a lot of people are, there are Yulu cycles right opposite the, the metro, that MG Road exit onto the Church Street, and people are using them. People are kind of cycling, and they're using our electric cycles, which the startups have put there. So there is a lot of interest. So idea is also to look at micro mobility and encourage that. So we are working on some scheme for micro mobility, so that also, so make it easy for people to get permissions, etc. So that also would be out shortly. So all these are integrated, public transport, walking, cycling, micro mobility, which is mostly non-motorized transport, because again, I am not favor of micro mobility, which is scooters and stuff like that, but micro mobility, which is non-motorized transport. So all this hopefully will tie together. So, and one last comment, we are also looking at other streets. In fact, Gandhi Bazaar, you all know, it is already in the detailed design stage, but we need to again go back and have meetings with the local vendors. We had a meeting with the Honorable MLA. We will go there and have it. 8th Cross, we had some meetings with the residents. Maybe we need to take the idea forward. There may be other streets and people may, but the success of this initiative would be when people just write to us or say that we want to have, similar kind of a pedestrianized streets in their locality, and how we can handle them and help them. That is what we would be interested in. Thank you, Revati.
Thank you, Madam Manjula. Let me move to Naresh, the architect in several ways. Tell us a little bit about the backstory, and I'm sure you have many, many interesting stories to tell us about Church Street and how it came to be. So, Naresh, how do we ensure also that very quickly, the moment you have broad, nice pavements, footpaths, we find suddenly hawkers come there and it's all captured. So how do you ensure that there is no capture, but we are actually providing design which includes spaces, designated spaces? And how do we ensure that the rest of the spaces which are not meant for hawkers are then free of any kind of hawking? So I think those are some important areas and design considerations, and maybe you can take us through the entire story.
Okay, I think the entire story may take too long, but let me just focus on what you specifically spoke about. See, a lot of people, Church Street initially was conceived as a pedestrian-only street when we started working on it. But you realize that there are many offices there who have vehicles dropping their people into their offices, and more than about 60 residents. People live on that street, usually in cul-de-sacs off the main road, in apartments. So it was difficult to convert that idea to tell. I mean, one of the biggest objections, as Manjula ma'am pointed out, came from a lot of residents who practically said, what will happen if there's a medical emergency? How will we take somebody to the hospital, etc., etc., right? So it was designed as a hybrid street. Probably the one design change I will make now, if I'm given a chance to revisit that, is not to make a distinction between the footpath and the carriageway. What is happening is there is a footpath, there is a depression for the carriageway, and then there is a footpath again. If you make it all at one level without a distinction, then it becomes more of a hybrid street. And then people are not confined. The traffic follows the pedestrian rather than the pedestrian avoiding the traffic. I've seen this done in some Western countries. And the second issue I want to actually bring up here is that what Manjula ma'am has achieved with cooperation from other civic agencies is not just a clean air initiative, and it's not just a mobility initiative. This is, and I think Kiran will like to hear it, this is actually the beginning of the investment in public health. And it has to be reframed in that perspective. Just to give you some background, 1 in 8 deaths in India are due to air pollution today. It is the single largest cause of morbidity in this country today. And I was speaking to a pulmonologist just a couple of days back. He says in 5 years, 2015 to 2020, the amount of cases with pulmonary issues has risen by 80%. It's incredible. Just in 5 years, The number of pulmonology cases that are respiratory illnesses that are coming to hospitals is increased by 80%. Now, the whole point here is already the 2.5 levels in Bangalore are 4 times the Indian limit. The international limit is 10. The Indian limit is about 40, I think. We're already now, many days we're hitting 190, 200 and things like that in Bangalore. And we are happily patting ourselves on the back saying Delhi is at 800 or something like that. So this is not a relative Schadenfreude kind of situation. This has to be tackled properly now. And if you go as business as usual in Karnataka now, in Bangalore, if you continue as business as usual, but in another 8 to 10 years, the PM 2.5 will increase by another 50%. Because the rate of adoption of electric vehicles is not yet at a peak. It will take another 8-10 years for it to completely replace the internal combustion engine. The other issue I want to bring is the Karnataka budget today, and I want to raise the discussion a little outside I think many people have spoken about the street itself, is completely driven by the Indian adoption of the SDG goals of the United Nations, the Sustainable Development Goals. And one of the fundamental Sustainable Development Goals, India has launched something called the NCAP, the National Clean Air Initiative, in January this year actually, and to achieve a 30% reduction in particulate matter in another 2 years. That's all we have, by 2024. Right? The advantage in public health, what happens is that lifespan increases by a certain amount, a couple of years. The benefits far outweigh the cost of doing this kind of, closing infrastructure to cars. And of course, the promotion of sustainable mobility being a given. The fun part for the people of the city, the citizens of the people, is that they need not pay for a gym to go and have a good time and to exercise. And you will take the example of Japan, and the interesting part of Japan is that the mobility is so thought through that there is hardly any obesity per capita of the population, and almost a very low rate of respiratory illnesses, because the Japanese, on the average, from child to old person, walk an average of 8,000 steps a day. In India, that rate is coming down every year to less than 2,000 to 2,500. So unless you start investing in walking streets, and as Manjula Madam pointed out, there are a lot of misinformed people who do not understand that this is an investment in public health, and we must reframe this argument, saying that unless we do this all over the city and stop building cities for cars and instead build cities for people, nothing will ever change. The last point I want to come to, Revati, is your point of hawkers. There is a Supreme Court judgment which says that designated hawking zones must be provided for hawkers in busy urban areas. The usual comment I hear from activists here is that, they literally want a Pani Puri stall or somebody selling knickknacks every 10 feet from each other. And that they claim is the right of the hawkers. That is not true. The Supreme Court is very clear on what guidelines are to be there. In Church Street, there are 4 locations which are originally. The Government of India, according to the Ministry of Road Transport and Sustainable City Design, has also said, as far as possible, the footpaths must be a minimum width of 2 meters on either side of the road. And if worst case, it's 1.8 meters. So Church Street is like a trumpet, okay? The narrowest part is where it joins Brigade Road, and there it's only 35 or 40 feet wide. And the widest part is near Koshi's, where it is more than 60 feet wide. So as you come up the street, there are certain areas after half of it, which are designated for hawkers. There is also some area near the metro station, which could be used for this if the metro agrees. Indians are used to the concept of a sante, what we call in Kannada as sante, the shandy as it's called in other parts of India, that the whole idea of a street market is something that we take to at a natural level. I really feel that from a sustainable point of view, Manjula ma'am, you said people should come there in spite of, not just for the event, but they should keep coming there. Is that to institutionalize? There are many Santes which are held in Bangalore for both upper classes as well as for middle class people. We should structure that and work out in such a way that every week becomes or every month, if you like, or every 15 days, a different kind of Sante, maybe one focused on sustainable products for the home, one for maybe a little more focus rather than allowing every single kind of stall to come there. That could be one idea. The other thing is that we have to understand that pedestrian streets are what people remember of cities. Kiran just pointed out a little while ago saying, Paris and London. What you remember there is not the vehicles. What you remember there is the pleasure you got walking, and people remember those streets very well in their mind. And we have to find a way, and we cannot wait for every street in Bangalore to become the quality of Church Street. I was just telling Manjula ma'am, we have focused a lot on the cantonment side of town. To this morning, I was just telling her that, we have to take Avenue Road next and close that street from Saturday morning to Sunday night and to vehicles, and then see how that experiment works. And no need to do any upgrade of any infrastructure, physical infrastructure, but we have to put in the soft infrastructure like what DULT has done on Church Street in terms of sensitizing people, in terms of exhibiting micro-mobility solutions, etc., etc. And Church and Avenue Road and Dotpet Main Road is the center of Bangalore, and it's the most neglected part of the city. We should also celebrate the legacy of our founder, Kempegowda the First, and make sure that the next street we do. I have spoken a lot to commercial street people. The shopkeepers all are now desperate to have cars. It's impossible to convince them. And they have a small point also that all the car parking lots where they used to park cars have been barricaded by the military. Nobody can park any cars in the vicinity of Church Commercial Street. They're also crying. Brigade Road, being a thoroughfare between north and south Bangalore, is also difficult to pull off, but definitely the footpaths can be widened. But I really feel that we should go to smaller areas. Don't worry about the physical infrastructure. Weekend across the city, declare, just like you made a success of cycle day all over the city, like somebody else pointed out in the discussion. Take the same locations and convert 10 of them at once. And I know we need a large volunteer force. Rotary Club of Bangalore has volunteered to be that force, if you like. They have more than 50 clubs in Bangalore, and more than 20,000 people are members. They're willing to come and help. Let us make this pedestrian free across Bangalore. Like, the next step should not be a pilot, it should be a blast. Thank you.
Wow, that was a real blast, Naresh. Thank you for that. And I think we're all looking forward to having this in more places. RK, you would have seen a lot of coordination issues as we navigate these difficult conversations between BBMP, DULT, citizens, issues. And you have recently seen what has happened in making the bus lanes possible in ORR and cycle lanes possible. There's a lot happening. So can you share some of the experiences which can be replicated in other parts of the city? Hello? RK?
Yes.
You're on mute.
Yeah. So I think I will clearly, there are two distinct aspects to this. One is the coordination among the government agencies, between the government agencies. The another is, of course, is the government agency and the public. And I think the first hurdle usually is, for any project among the government agencies, and, given that I've been involved in this effort almost 10 odd years now, 10, 15 years, a good initiative, usually initiated by one particular government department, unfortunately does not get the same understanding and goodwill across the departments. And given that we are so interlinked in terms of role division and the responsibilities and things like that, it gets mired into, oh, this is, XYZ's project. I'm not going to do, because it's not my project, I'm going to do things on my own. And the earliest of this coordination nightmare or challenge we faced was a tender share. Tender share was an amazing concept. BBMP initially kind of was cold to it. Then we put together, in fact, even the design were outsourced. We couldn't get even the contractor to do it. No Bangalore contractor was willing. 3 times tender were called, because contractors were not willing to do that hard work. They were happy to do asphalting, make money and move on. And this was the real work. Asphalting was almost, not more than 10% of the project cost. And nobody wanted to dig and put the pipes and do it. I mean, it was shocked that we had to even find a contractor. We finally found in Chennai, a French collaboration, this thing and all that. So starting from those fundamental things, that non-availability of the quality contractors, to the unwillingness of engineers to put hard work. This is a completely mindset change. And I think Tender Share was the first of its kind project. And I clearly remember, once we got the contractor, getting contractor used to the ways of Bangalore, I would call it, was a nightmare. And finally, as Kiran pointed out, people on St. Mark's Road, the parents who are putting their kids into those schools there on Residency Road, they were saying that wider footpaths are dangerous for the kids. Now, this was something which was almost like, counterintuitive to anybody. How can a wider footpath be dangerous for the kids who are going to school? I think the idea was they were getting to park whole day their cars and everything to pick up and drop. It was a lot of, coordination challenge. And then finally, when we managed to get it done, and of course, it took none other than Chief Secretary to get all the departments. In fact, it used to be fortnightly meetings, and there he has to use the whip to get various departments, whether it was BESCOM, BWSSB, to come online. But what happened after Tender Share, actually the culture got set. Now government departments will resist, but they will not squabble and straightforward. They will not refuse it. It's still not easy. So I think Tender Share put that. And despite our best efforts, there was huge criticism. Again, people saying, oh, you're creating. In fact, people go and convince chief ministers of the state, sir, these guys don't understand. They are making footpath wider. I mean, I've been asked by chief ministers, at least 3 chief ministers, what is the logic? We have so many cars, my footpath is wider than this thing. It is so, I think, counterintuitive to the decision makers. What we people seem is obvious. So I think that's one of the biggest challenge we come across. And of course, when you convince the people in decision-making circles and got their blessing, then hopefully machinery, falls in place. Another, I think, beautiful thing about Bangalore, we don't have many cities who have organizations like DALT. They have, some cities are better, like Ahmedabad, they have a lot of design and, kind of a consultation capability within the organization, where Bangalore absolutely doesn't have it, or BBMP. But luckily we have DALT, which kind of can do designs without the push and pull of 198 decision makers. And then the challenge is that, of course, whatever DALT has designed is ideal. How does it get translated onto the ground? So Church Street, I remember sitting in one restaurant, me, Naresh, a couple other engineers, Kabale, and 10, 12 residents, and they're almost militant. We discussed, we had 3-4 meetings. The Resident Welfare Association, then we met with this. Just nobody could kind of, get to the idea that is to be done. And finally, we are here. So I think some previous panelists also mentioned, it is the first, in our own mind, we have to believe in it. So it's a conviction of belief. Once we believe that this is the right thing and needed, then of course convincing people around us. In democracy, it is your conviction alone is not going to sail unless people around you also become convinced about what you're thinking. And I think right now we are almost in a very nice equilibrium state where DALT is able to do its work in terms of designing and ideating. And then various agencies like Bus Priority Lane, of course, all of you are, many of you are in those groups. You see, it's almost like while I was calling, I get a call from DCP And he said, no, sir, Dalt may have designed, but my people are telling this entry is not allowed. I mean, and they're physically forcing the BBMP workers and engineers and shoveling and things like that. Now, while somebody who seems to be passionate about it and doesn't understand how these interdepartment and then there are push and pull, it becomes very difficult. Unfortunately, in our city, no one man rules the roost across the organization. Doesn't matter who it is. It could be the top man, but then guy in the really lowest bureaucracy can scuttle things. So I think coordination is our biggest challenge. Right now, it is being done through some informal mechanisms and some formal mechanisms. I believe more of it will happen. But the most important, nobody now questions tender sure because people have started believing. I remember when the St. Mark's Road was opened, and our chief minister at that time, Siddharamaiah, was inaugurating, and we were standing in the circle, State Bank circle, and there are around 2,000-3,000 people on various footpaths listening to the chief minister, and traffic was not stopped. It was the first event where chief minister was inaugurating a road, standing in the middle of the road, and road traffic was not stopped. And I was there, and I told chief minister, sir, see the beauty of what you have achieved, what we have achieved. 3,000 people are listening to you standing on footpath. The traffic is not stopped. You are in the middle of the traffic. This is the beauty of it. And I think you should announce 50 more. And he got shocked. He said, 50 means how much? I said, doesn't matter, sir. And 50 is a good number. Announce 50 roads more. And some will be 800 meters, some will be 2 kilometers, but it's a good number. So I think the leadership at the political level, obviously bureaucracy is not able to convince this kind of thing because leaders think in a very different context. You show him how's public responding to the initiatives. So even in Church Street, by end of February, if public is not convinced, I think many more will not happen. So it's very important that many of us who are in a position where we can shape public opinion, do a public discourse where people get convinced and are able to translate that into the leader's mind that this is good even for them, because leaders look at popularity also. So I think this is a very delicate balance which a democracy is known for, and more of it we can do, I think more successful and better we'll be.
So thanks, Rake. I know it's a very, very difficult job to coordinate between all the agencies and make things happen, because unless we catalyze from outside, some of these things take a very long time to happen. The paper will be waiting to be moved from one table to another or one office to another, and we have to physically make some of these things happen. So that's a phenomenal job which is being done. And RK, thank you for pushing so many initiatives. Kiran, I'll get back to you. I think we are at a very exciting phase. And how do you see the future of these kinds of pedestrian-only streets in the city and non-motorized transport? How would you, when you talk to the chief minister or when you talk to the chief secretary, what would you like to tell them? Kiran, you're on mute. Okay, I think we'll wait for Kiran to come back. Manjula ma'am, I think let me take the next question to you. I don't think I would trivialize this by saying COVID made it happen. You seized the opportunity. You saw the opportunity in COVID and you just grabbed it. So I think a lot of compliments to you for grabbing that opportunity and seizing the moment and not being afraid of taking that moment on. So I think that is great. And this is going to see a change, hopefully lead to some change in behavior. I know that Naresh mentioned that some of the streets could be made pedestrian-only streets without much improvement just as is and just do it. That's of course great, but most parts of the city do not have footpaths, basic footpaths. So even if people are cycling on the streets, there are no footpaths. So I think some minimal amount of capex on focusing on footpaths in any of these streets is inevitable. And how do you see the government looking at some of these things? Because obviously we don't want to stop as a pilot. We want to see this happening in different parts of the city. How do you see the government looking at some of these things from a budgetary point of view? Because if the budgets are not there to provide proper footpaths, people are walking and enjoying in Church Street because the footpaths are at least decent. So, can you give us throw some light on this?
Yeah, see, lot has changed in the past many years. You would have seen Tendershore itself. Government has invested a lot of money in improving, and even from BBMP, there is been they have, for the first time, I think they have identified a cycling network which they wish to take it forward. In addition, as a part of the transit-oriented development policy, and recently government has amended the relevant sections of Town and Country Planning Act to provide for a MRT cess, a surcharge which can be collected while giving approvals for development of land, etc. And this money is supposed to come into a Bangalore Urban Transport Fund. So there is a kind of an effort being made to also get a premium FAR, get monies through premium FAR along the TOD areas. And the focus on the transit-oriented development zones will be mostly on walking and cycling, with the transit as the central, point. So definitely there would be, see, in any government, there is always like a demand for the funds from various kind of priorities. So there is a priority for education, priority for health, priority for water. But one way of trying to get proper funding for all these initiatives which actually make people healthy, and what Naresh Narasimhan said is very apt and appropriate, because after all, by walking and cycling more, one's health improves, is to raise resources through this process. So we hopefully in next few months we would have this Bangalore Urban Transport Fund in place, and the funds that accrue to it will be only used for improving last and first mile connectivity, and also improving the livability of the areas. Maybe more public places to be developed where people can congregate and have social interactions. That is the goal and that is the target. So hello.
Hello.
Okay, thank you, Ray.
Yeah. So that's phenomenal. I think good to hear that the government is really looking at something like this. I think it's very, very critical, because if budgetary allocations are not there, then really, we can talk about lots of great things. Throwing open the streets will be nice, but if you have open footpaths with a gutter and filth flowing through the gutter, nobody is going to walk, and that is not going to be a pleasant experience. So yeah, you want to say something?
One more point I want to say is, I always believe, and we keep saying funds are not there, I think it is the proper application of funds that is important. So it's not what is happening to the funds which are anyway being spent on various civic works in various wards, etc. If you are in a position to spend them properly, with a focused objective of making these streets with walkable and cyclable, then definitely we can get the funds. So I don't always buy the idea that lack of funds is hindering it. Maybe it's lack of as Naresh Narasimhan said, lack of design knowledge, or lack of coordination, as Mr. Vishra has mentioned, or lack of proper application of funds. So that is something we need to tackle, and I think we are trying to do so. I'm optimistic about it, because today everybody, even if we talk to engineers, etc., they do talk about improving walkability, improving cycling, for example. We got a lot of support from BBMP engineers They keep coming and saying, why don't we do a cycle route there? Why don't we plan for that? So there is a change in the perspective of people. Maybe not to the extent that we wanted, but definitely it is, people are changing. Their focus is also changing. We have corporators and ex-corporators talking about cycle lanes and clean streets, etc. So this discourse is actually the narrative, the direction of the narrative is changing, and we need to keep it in that positive direction. So I think.
Yeah.
Really,
So do you?
a quick one on this money part. I think I fully agree. I don't know. I mean, if you're aware, we have created this 51 crore rupees project for a network of cycles starting from MG Road, going via Old Madras Road, coming to Kalpuram, going on Outer Ring Road, Silk Board, Kormangla, and Indiranagar back to MG Road. Now, money was never a problem. Nobody even thought about when they start cycle lane, okay, 3 roads of HSR layout, 5 streets there. Now, BBMP is unfortunately planning, execution, money allocation, all agencies put together. Now, when you have to push something like this, it's a chicken and egg situation. When it comes from DULT, suppose this design came, they say, oh, fund, there's no fund. Now, when it comes from BBMP, they will allocate the fund, the design will be very poor. So the implementation will be lousy. So this is the kind of problem we have. So especially, and here also, by the way, we had Bangalore East and Bangalore West project. Bangalore West project also around 26 crores in and around Jayanagar is completely botched up. In fact, supposedly project is done, nothing is done. Now we are investigating and there is a TVCC inquiry going on and all that. Luckily on the east side, it got delayed and we got DULT involved, and now the beautiful cycle lane is coming of 51 kilometers, where you can, starting from the central MG Road, you can come all the way to Outer Ring Road and go back to Indiranagar, Kormangla, all cycle without even getting interacted with anywhere, with the other traffic. So there, once we got the project plan done, we made sure that DULT was involved, because we knew the BBMP will go for if the design is not proper. And now the resistance is there because engineer knows it's already done. And completely, by the way BBMP decided, they had allocated money for digging and filling, by the way. Or road will be dug by 1 feet and 1 meter, and there's no need to do it. But then we could change it because we convinced the, of course, decision maker, whoever it is, and we got it done. And then DULT could add value to it by their design excellence. So, I mean, this is unfortunately, we call it the Indian jugaad of governance, what we are doing. Systems are still not made, and money is never a problem. We got 500 crore for high density corridors, 12 high density corridors, making them world class. Unfortunately, there's a tussle going on. Should we give it to KRDCL, which is a specialized road agency, or BBMP? Now,
No, the order is issued now. KRDCL order is issued now.
I know now, but you know what happened? Eventually, we had to take it to cabinet. Otherwise, there was a back and forth. And everybody, by the way, who's anybody in bureaucracy was involved. So finally, you have to somehow push it and go to the top man and get it to the, so it cannot be nullified. Because then it had to go to cabinet. Once it goes to cabinet, then it cannot be nullified. Now KRDCL is there, and you'll not believe what all it takes. So I think, anyway, it's a competing interest. It is a competing jurisdiction where you have to really manage. And I think this is also beauty of democracy. Hopefully, in the end, good prevails. But yes, money is not a problem. I can assure you that. And if leadership is convinced about something, maybe credibility issue also will be there. If they think you are credible, you say something and there is a proper plan, money is not a problem. So that narrative that Bangalore doesn't have money is wrong. Money is misallocated, as
So really the question is misallocation, not allocating for the right priorities. And
Yes.
I think finally we begin to see that Bangalore is beginning to allocate more money towards sustainable initiatives rather than totally unsustainable initiatives.
Yep.
Naresh, I think we still don't have Kiran, but Naresh, any closing comments that you would like to make on how we should have more urban planning in designing our streets, and how can we change this mindset? We should not be in permanent jugaad mode. We should have a process. We should ensure that DULT is involved. We should ensure that all citizens, the locals and the people from outside that whole affected area are all consulted. because the people who are in that area, as Srinivas rightly said, feel that nobody understands their problem, you know. So how would you, and you have experienced possibly this closer than most others have, people are still, maybe some people are complaining, and can we have like a best practice which can be then applied so that the time to get consensus is cut short? Oh, Naresh is not able to get back on the call, unfortunately.
Yes, ma'am.
He,
We are trying to coordinate. He's
huh.
trying to log in back again.
So can you please try and get him back?
Yes.
Meanwhile, now I will get back to Manjula ma'am. So I just wanted to know, we have many agreements on the government of India signs the Paris Climate Agreement. They start out something called clean air. Then we look at right to clean air under Article 21. So many things. Can the city not set some goals and say that we will, by so and so year, we will ensure that all these streets become streets which are pedestrianized, non-motorized, etc. Can't we work on, then we actually work towards a goal and an implementation plan towards that goal, rather than just being on a pilot mode?
See, these kind of goals are set in the comprehensive mobility plan for the city, but we are also looking at further strengthening the goals there. For example, the present comprehensive mobility plan needs a little more flesh to be added so far as the non-motorized transport or micro mobility is concerned. So though it has been recently approved, we are going to further work on it, and you are correct, we need to have such goals there, so that at least the goal will keeping that goal in sight, and that goal should percolate to the wards. Many of you have also recommended that we need to engage more with the ward committees, etc. I think we need to engage with communities, we need to engage with the ward committees. So one action would be to actually set up properly articulate these goals in the comprehensive mobility plan. The other is an experiment we have just started. You are aware of Suma. We're actually trying to engage with the communities to ask them to come forward and tell us what is their goal for the neighborhood. See, what happens is often we have a city-wide goal, but neighborhoods and communities do not understand or do not own that goal. But if I tell people, okay, what is your goal, what is your goal for your neighborhood, what is your objective, so we in through Suma we want to encourage that kind of a discussion where communities look at their neighborhood, look at their mode shares, look at their travel patterns, and then come back and say we will increase our walking by so much percent, will increase use of non-motorized transport by such and such percent. So both should happen, higher level goal setting, but also with local engagement, neighborhood engagement, so that this goal becomes very pertinent to their own locality, on their neighborhood, which is something which they can identify with and work on. So both these activities have to happen, and we are trying to act on both fronts.
Okay. So thank you very much. Is Naresh back? No. Unfortunately, he dropped off. He sent me a message saying he's trying to get back, but he's having connectivity issues. Any closing
But
comments?
I think, sorry, Revati, I think the panel one people are there, the speakers could be there. Probably could open it to them also, and probably.
Yeah, if there are any, that is fine. So if is Professor Verma there? Yeah, Professor Verma is there. Any comments from you? We've heard a little bit about the challenges and coordination and all of that. Any comments after hearing this panel?
Yeah, so for us, sitting in research institution, we sometimes feel handicapped when we keep talking about and keep researching, and throwing results. on various aspects of sustainable transport, through our research papers, theses, and other things. But we feel handicapped in, not being able to translate those things onto the ground, especially since the implementation not lies in our hand. So that way, I feel very excited about this collaboration that we are doing uh, with DALT, and through DALT with other agencies, to bring in the thinking and expertise and the whole framework of evaluating such interventions. And it's a win-win situation, because it is not just feeding into our research, as we always like to do that, but it's actually helping the government to evaluate such pilots and implementations in a holistic manner, and then have some basis to expand it in other places, or to make it a permanent fixture, and so on. So we would really like to work more closely with agencies like DULT and other government agencies, to really see and help not just scale this up, but also act as a independent uh, mm, organization who can really study this and give an unbiased and holistic overview of how this is impacted, and so on, thereby helping governments and government agencies. So that's where I really feel excited about these collaborations. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say in the closing remarks.
Revati,
Great, great.
Revati, I think there is something which I would request BPAC also to look into. See, I think Professor Verma is rightly said that many times we have seen his reports. Unfortunately, the reports don't get into implementation on the ground. On the other hand, I would like request Majla Madam and Professor Verma, whatever initiatives we are taking. For example, this is one of the big initiatives of cycle lane, which we are doing. This I told you, 15 kilometer. I think initially itself, if you get involved and do the before, during, and after study and publish results, because see, when we go and ask for additional funds, it's a taxpayer's money, correct? We need to show the value. Everybody will come up and say, yeah, it's all very fancy, you creating these cycle lanes, taking so much money and all the 51 crore. What is there to show for it? Correct? Socio-economic benefit, financial outcomes, health outcomes, as Naresh mentioned. And if you get engaged from very beginning and get into the process, and where we can showcase, I think we'll be able to get much more buy-in from the public, as well as from the decision makers. As well, we will also be convinced what we are doing is not just a kind of fancy idea which some of us like to do it, but actually it's beneficial for the city. This two initiatives, one is of course bus priority lane, which you're aware, where you could again engage through DULT, and both are almost getting ready. This we will be inaugurating, I think, by month end. Bus priority lane and cycle lane, at least on the ORR 17 kilometer, will also be inaugurated by Jan end, I think, most probably. And then 51 kilometers by March. Please do get engaged, and we would like an independent organization like yours, research organization, will add a lot of value in terms of our own conviction that what we are doing is in the right direction, rather than just doing it and hoping that it is helping.
That's fantastic. I see that Naresh has come back, and so Naresh, you missed my earlier question. My question was, on
Naresh is
urban
gone
planning.
again. Naresh is gone again.
Oh, left again. Okay. So okay, so I just leave it open to. I think I have sort of exhausted most of my questions, and if there are any closing comments, Manjula ma'am, I think there is going to be demand for many streets to be pedestrianized this way. And starting from myself, I will ask for 100 feet Indira Nagar prime candidate to be pedestrianized. It was always meant to be a pedestrian only street, and it just became what it is today. So there are many, I'm sure every citizen has such demands, and it's really gratifying to see that the government is very open to it. I think our learnings from Church Street have to be documented well, especially in terms of the kinds of resistance we came across, both from a socio-economic point of view, economic point of view, socio-economic point of view, and also from a design perspective. Unless we put all these things down like a cheat sheet, we will not be able to make progress in the next one. And each one may have slightly different ones, and we can start creating a master set of issues that need to be tackled in the front end. But any closing comments from your side?
I agree with you, Revati, because different streets, there are different typologies. See, Church Street is mostly commercial with some residential pocket. If you look at commercial street, it is mostly significantly commercial with no residences. If you look at a street like, say, Gandhi Bazaar, in addition to shops, which is a commercial street, in addition to shops, restaurants, you have vendors also. And if you look at 8th Cross, recently I was told, in addition to shops and regular vendors, there are floating population of vendors who come near during a festival. So we would have different typologies. And as you correctly said, we need to look at and very closely, because different groups will get impacted differently, and we have to take them all along and not exclude them, because if we exclude them, we are affecting livelihoods. See, livability is good, but it should not come at the cost of livelihoods of people. So we need to really match both. So it's a challenging and interesting thing, and we hope to take it forward with the help of people here. The entire
Yes.
panel one, then panel two could be give us the expose.
Yeah, I wish Naresh had been there to make that closing comment on this point that you raised, because each street is so different.
No, I'm here, Revati.
Oh, you've come back.
Naresh, what is this? You disappear in between. This is not.
I don't know. I got disconnected and I could not reconnect back at all for some reason. Now I came on the phone. My computer is frozen. I came back on the phone.
You need to invest in a better computer, man. What is this?
No, I have a very good computer. Some kuch grafda hai isme. I don't know.
Okay, so you heard my question regarding planning and various types of streets, and how can we create a good cheat sheet for different kinds of things, and we can keep expanding that and create typologies of streets so that we can deploy some of these things quickly.
No, I think this whole experiment of doing it on a weekend is the experiment you need. All the problems like what Manjula madam pointed out will pop out of the woodwork the moment you try it for 1.5 days. And then as you go along, you have to resolve it. And each situation in some sense will be unique, as she pointed out. There are different constituents in different streets. I'm trying to actually see how we can make Avenue Road next. And Avenue Road is a very complex street. It has wholesale traders, it has retail shopping, it has people living on it, it has tombs which have all kinds of people buried in it. I mean, it's like a very interesting microcosm of how the street is. But so you can't have a one size fits all. And also you have to see what is the surrounding impact area, whether there's an alternative place for people to park even two-wheelers. I agree, in an ideal situation, everybody should come by metro and go by bus or whatever it is. But in many cases, when you have older people who want to come to the street, you have no choice except to bring them in a vehicle. So hopefully initiative like this will become part of the revised master plan. Right now, a lot of my focus is now going on. This time we have to get the master plan of Bangalore right.
Yes,
we have withdrawn it now, and
so.
I would strongly suggest BPAC get involved in it, saying, I'm putting together a presentation for the government now called Making Planning Work in India. And under that I'm writing, it's called implementation. Now the subtext is called, we have a lot of planners in this country, and people who study what is going wrong. We have very few people in this country who can actually do what is right. And the failure of all our master plans, something like this, when I showed it to my French friends in Paris, I sent this. They said we have 300 streets in Paris like this. Not one or two, 300. I said, my God, it's a long way away. At least we have, one of the main inspirations for Church Street came when I saw a street in Paris many years ago, which has this hybrid quality of, and what happens is that the moment you do not differentiate between the footpath and the carriageway, what we are used to seeing, the traffic becomes hybrid. And the best example of that is a very interesting street in London called Princess Street near the Royal Albert Hall. They've gone to such an extent that they've removed all signage. There is no signage on the street at all. No saying stop here, parking here, no, nothing. And vehicles and people are allowed to intermingle. But what happens is instinctively cars avoid the street because they know the speed will come down to 3 kilometers an hour because the pedestrian has right of way on that street. So we'll have to try different experiments like this. One of the other things we can do immediately without any difficulty, if DULT agrees, is the in-between street of the Jayanagar shopping complex. It is not a street. See, why Church Street works is it is not a thoroughfare. It does not serve as a place to go from one side of a city to another. It's almost like a parallel infrastructure. So one of the things is if we can quickly identify this parallel infrastructure, I've got 4 or 5 examples like this. Avenue Road is not. Avenue Road has to be forcefully shut down. There is no other way. But in the Jayanagar, there is a thing. In Indranagar, there are places like that. There are many other places like that which easily lend themselves to. Gandhi Bazaar is a classic example where there is a, in unusual mix. We have to try these experiments and embed what we are doing in the new master plan. If you don't embed it as part of the legal and as well as the statutory systems in the new master plan saying SDG goal, air quality is #1 for Bangalore. And to do that, we need to pedestrianize, we need to create pedestrian-free zones. We have to be able to push that. And I really request BPAC to start getting involved in starting to think how to get planning right in Bangalore. And we cannot goof it up anymore. Enough of calling foreign consultants and who tell us what to do. We have to stop using Western frameworks, even things like TOD and all that, you have to take it with a pinch of salt. You can't just densify a city on FSI without investing in underground infrastructure to carry it. Just to give you an example, I put a video out on Church Street a couple of days ago saying everybody sees only the top, but you have to, I want to make a presentation what is below that street. It is designed for another 30 years of upgradation. Nothing will, and no electrical cable. There is an electrical cable is designed for about 100% extra load. The water systems are designed for that. The sewage system is designed for that. That is why it landed up costing a lot more than it did. But think about it, it's the same logic as Tender Sure, as RK pointed out. There are no potholes on Tender Sure roads today. And that proves that, mostly it is the people who want annuity contracts, who want to spend the same amount of money every year on a road, who come in the way of us implementing these plans. We have to find a way to convince them that, come on, for the good of the city, for the good of your children, for the good of your elderly parents, clean air, it will not come unless we stop vehicle expansion in the city. And by doing all these things, we are going in the right direction. And I'm sorry, one last thing. A lot of people are, pushing this whole idea of electric mobility as a panacea for all evils. An electric car is still a car, okay? And which is occupying physical space on the road, even if it's a Tesla. What we need is electric mass mobility solutions. The word public transit has to become embedded in our life. And like Japan and like many other Western countries have done, we have to learn to use the only public transport that we are in control of is the number 11, which is your own 2 feet, which takes you for all daily work. Number 11 should be the preferred mode of transport. And that will only happen when we have proper footpaths. Focus on that. We are all behind you. And I really thank DULT for having pulled this off. We've been trying really hard to make this happen since 2.5 years ago. And I think that, this is a great thing for the future. Thank you.
Yeah, Manjula ma'am has really seized the moment.
Yes.
Not easy to seize the moment. It requires a lot of guts. So congratulations on that. And while on that, some of our policies, Naresh, you mentioned that we had a parking policy.
Yeah.
The parking policy actually incentivized private transport. So BPAC has given detailed set of recommendations saying you cannot incentivize private transport. It should, first of all, cater to transport which is towards shared transport for people who are providing first and last mile connectivity, those kinds of things. And then next, electric vehicles. These are the kinds of things which are used for shared transport. So we have to create a hierarchy in which we will give incentives for various things. Anyway, this is a good beginning, and I think let us hope that we can have many more such conversations. The narrative is changing. I can see it changing over the last 7 years. Now I hope this will create a case for its acceleration. And with that, I want to call this panel to a close. We are 7:34, 4 minutes beyond what we said we will. And thank you all very much. And thank you, Manjula ma'am. We hope we can see many more fantastic things that we can celebrate together. We must announce very quickly many more streets that can be pedestrianized. So I'm sure the city will welcome it, and lots of people will be excited, because people don't feel safe sending their children even out to buy a small thing from the shops, because that's the level, that's the stage we have reached. So it's not just about all of us and enjoying, it's about safety of our children on the streets to do even small things. With that, thank you very much. And for all the panelists in panel 1 and panel 2, and Andrew for catalyzing this entire effort. We are very, very grateful, and we hope we can get together again to discuss some more interesting things in the coming weeks and coming months. And let's take advantage of COVID and the lack of very crowded streets to experiment the way we want. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.